Thanks, Steve. Blimey, this is my 6th year coming to the TTF and attending these events. I think during that time I've probably heckled, berated, questioned numerous speakers over that time from the cheap seats, so it probably feels about time it's my turn to come up here. So I accept that this is a rather contentious hypothetical question. Drivers may be looking through the windscreen, but are they actually seeing anything? However, I think I've probably earned the right to consider such a question, and I'll elaborate on that experience of why I think that in a second. Firstly though, a bit about the city that I work for. So Portsmouth is unique. It's the UK's only island city, home to 250,000 people, and a not well-known fact is it's actually the most densely populated city in the UK outside of London. As you can see from the picture there, it's also surrounded by water on 3 sides. That gives huge connectivity challenges, both for the transport network, but also for data communications. There are no 3, 4, 5G masts in the harbours and in the Solent. So that causes a number of unique challenges. Also, it's home to the Royal Navy, who do all sorts of things with communications, which they can't confirm or deny that they're doing. Home to the Royal Navy, including both aircraft carriers. You may have seen recently in the news the scandal that is robbing parts from one carrier to another. You know, that's been going on for years. The good news is that the parts they know work. They also know transport costs of moving them from one carrier to the other. We're also a nuclear-powered vessel-capable port. And that means we have to have regular multi-agency exercises to keep that capability, rehearsing radioactive leak scenarios, all of those type of things, so it's always an interesting place to work. So, we've also got 2 ro-ro ferry ports, not just one, we're greedy, we've got 2, serving France, Spain, Channel Islands and the Isle of Wight. Interestingly, for the Channel Islands, 95% of food supplies for Jersey and Guernsey are delivered by ferry through Portsmouth. The supermarket shelves there go empty very quickly when ferry services are disrupted due to bad weather, industrial action, that type of thing. There is no bakery on Jersey or Guernsey that produces a medium white sliced loaf. They all come through Portsmouth. We've also got fast cat and hovercraft services to the Isle of Wight with our second port, which is further down into the city, not ideally placed really, right the way through our network. Portsmouth is also connected to the mainland by its own motorway, which we own and run, the M275. Also, it's bisected by the M27 and A27 strategic road network, and that makes it a perfect test bed for all sorts of transport technologies. We're geographically compact, we've got varied environments, including even one rural road across the top of Portsdown Hill. We're also in year 18 of a 25-year PFI contract for highways maintenance, which is worth £500 million over that time. Majority of the infrastructure is in pretty good condition, so it's good to add technology too. We've also got regular life cycle replacement programme, and that creates regular opportunities to upgrade rather than replace on a like-for-like basis. So, now going back to why I think I'm qualified to talk about my hypothetical question. And I'll make no apologies for the pictures here, I'm afraid. So we've had 12 fatal RTIs in 2022. Buzzwords of the decade, unprecedented. We had 12 in the previous 5 years. So this is a massive difference. As my role as network manager, I have to attend all of those police fatality investigations, along with a safer travel manager. You know, one thing that strikes me is the human cost of each one of those incidents. There's a tragic backstory that we get to hear about, behind each one, who the victims were, insight into their lives, which have then been cut short. What's encouraging from our point of view as a network operator is that none of them were an infrastructure defect that was identified as being a prime cause. Mostly it was a lack of observation or poor decision-making skills, poor roadcraft that's occurred. So, our CITS journey. We were the recipient of some of the original CITS funding from the DFT back in 2017-18. Thanks, Graham Hansen, for that money. We've still got some left. We're still using it. which is quite remarkable. And we've supplemented some of that by our own Smart Cities programme money. And we've really taken a slow and steady approach. I actually checked back the other day on that bid document to say what we were going to do then. And you know what? We're nearly there. After all these years, we've nearly achieved all the things we set out to do in 2017 within the money and the budget that we had. Quite amazing. So what are the issues that we've found? We've had issues with procurement, availability of equipment, supplier development roadmaps, people selling us stuff that then wasn't available on the shelf or hadn't even been developed, stuff that was available but then wasn't reliable and properly tested. So all of these issues, which I know many of you will have the same type of issues. One thing I do though, as network manager, but also responsible for technology, I'm able to keep it applicable to real world use cases. It's not abstract. I'm looking at problems that occur on our network on a day-to-day basis and how can we solve them. So we've been feeling our way ahead cautiously rather than running headlong into expensive blind alleys. We test and test again until it breaks. Then we know where the weaknesses are, where we need to beef things up. Things rarely work out the box in Portsmouth for all various good reasons, and we'll have suppliers come down and say, oh, it's worked here, there and other. Oh, the light's not coming on, it doesn't work, I don't understand it. So many suppliers have gone away with their sort of tail between their legs going, oh, I need to go away and look at this because that's really odd. But if we know where things will break, we can beef up solutions and mitigate rather than being caught unawares further down the track when we roll out. So, roadside to the dashboard. So one of the things we're talking about, this whole journey of data and information. So we're capturing data on street using sensors, Internet of Things devices. What we're doing is processing that data against a whole set of rules to generate information. We're doing some of that at the edge, some of that in the cloud. You know, where's the best place to process and handle that information? The output includes virtual VMS, email alerts, log files, and I'm going to give a shout out to George here from KL Systems because he's been a massive enabler to do some of this stuff of part of that data and information flow to get it, out into the vehicle, but also to alerts to us and all sorts of other things that we can do. And one of the things that's coming out from that is we're communicating that information to virtual VMS apps in the vehicle, a whole variety of different apps, some of which are fully integrated via Android Auto into the dashboard. The phone is put away. This information that is being pushed out to people directly in their dashboard, in their face. One of the things that we're doing, some of the things are in-vehicle signage. So we've got virtual VMS, which is geospatially triggered, virtual VAS, so things that are speed triggered, and things that are displayed for as long as is required or configured. One of the things that really annoys me, being a geographer by trade, is you've got, say, a hazard of a slippery road surface, and we have a single point of a pole with a triangular sign on it. I looked away the other way and I missed it, or it was caught up in the sign clutter, I didn't see it. In the virtual world, in a digital world, we can display that in the dash for the period of the hazard that is applicable. We can also provide driver instructions. A sign just tells people often there's a hazard. Actually, we can now tell people what to do. Slow down, take extra care, giving them a clear instruction. Also, we could escalate if not complied with. If people are still speeding over a certain range, we could still display the message, shout a bit louder, do all sorts of things that escalation that a sign on a pole can't do. One of the things I'll now look at is a pedestrian crossing example. So here we are driving down a road, and in the distance you can just make out there's a zebra crossing. Now what we've done is we've set up a geospatial object for that crossing with a warning zone, and what it's doing is the message on the app and in the dashboard, this on Android Auto is saying slow down, pedestrian crossing ahead. Now that's only triggered if I'm going above 25 mile an hour. So it's a certain point, and actually it's triggered by a certain speed. Now, below 25 mile an hour, no message is given. But we could configure that to say, beware pedestrian crossing. Above 25 mile an hour, we could be saying slow down. Almost like the opportunities are limitless. So what use cases, what are we doing about use cases? Well, we're taking a bit of a cookbook approach. We're using a whole variety of ingredients, data, a whole bunch of methods and rules, and presenting stuff in a whole variety of different ways. Giving it to drivers, alerting network management team, right into log files to review later. We're reusing some of the key functions as well. So things like HTTP post, without getting too techie, for some people might know what that is, we're actually getting systems to poke information to other systems by that. Actually we can create those in a generic way and use them for a variety of data sources. Some of that's coming from IoT devices to pass data, but also commands. So I can send data to a system and say, here's a load of data, and then later on I can send a command to say, well, actually, please can you catalogue that, email it, do something with it at a scheduled time even. We're trying as many different use cases as possible. We're trying to discover what doesn't yet work and needs further functionality. If we find that, then let's get on and build it. What things have we done? Journey time information, we've linked that to our Drakewell journey time system and now can display that in vehicle. We've replicated National Highways VMS information. We're warning of location hazards, pedestrian crossings, uneven road services, congestion alerts for when the Whiteling ferry stops running, warning of environmental hazards, strong winds. We had a storm event quite recently, and during the day we actually managed to get it working so that we were displaying a virtual VMS of strong winds when the gusts went over a certain period and then turned off again when they reduced. Fog alerts, we've got a visibility sensor. We're starting to look at linking things like that up. We've simulated wrong way in a one-way road. The app was shouting at me to stop, turn around, because I was going the wrong way down a simulated one-way road. We've also done things like complex polygons, entry into a clean air zone, hundreds and hundreds of points of a complex polygon. When you go in and out of that, it will tell you in the vehicle if you've gone in or out of that zone. What are we working on? Alert of roadworks using data via the Street Manager API. Virtual warning triangles and flashing beacons. Things like vehicle recovery, grass cutting, other mobile works. I can quite see a scenario where someone goes to recover a broken down vehicle. They put their beacon on, put their high-vis jacket on, and click on the app to say, I am now a hazard here and other vehicles approaching. Get that round the bend, down the hill before they can actually see the flashing beacon. Warning of traffic light failure. We can connect that IoT devices into the controller. If the traffic lights have failed and have got an error state, we could be communicating that to drivers before they come across them. Queue or slow traffic warnings. We're also now looking at warning of pedestrians on crossings and those likely to cross using AI, looking at the trajectory of people walking along the curbside. Are they looking like they're going to cross or not? And there's some really interesting concepts there about warning drivers that there's potentially people about to cross or someone's not. We've all been in that situation. Are they going to cross? Aren't they going to cross? Well, actually, you might be able to get a warning, a bit of extra information that people are likely to cross. Also, scheduling of alerts. We can start and end time, weekly and daily patterns, configure all of this stuff. One of the things we're looking at is advanced warning of level crossing barriers being lowered. Level crossing controller knows way in advance that the lights come on, that there's a train coming. Well, if we can capture that information, actually we could put that in vehicle to people so they've actually got a choice, they're aware of that, to take a different route rather than getting to the crossing to find the gates are going down and they're then sitting there for 5-10 minutes with their engine running, causing congestion and air quality issues. What else? Traffic lights. Everyone wants to link up to traffic lights. We've talked about loads about Glosser and Mover and all things like that. Actually, we could do some more simple things. Potentially the virtual horn blow of the irate driver behind when someone's sitting stationary at a green light. Move forward if safe to do so. There's a green light. There's messaging that we could do for that. Also, a lot of this capability we're doing in the virtual world, actually, we could control physical things like physical VMS. So other things we could look at, tactical diversion route signage. I was driving down a motorway, the road's closed. Oh, I'm now on this little tiny road. Oh, I've taken the wrong turn. I missed the diversion sign. I'm now in a cul-de-sac. Well, actually, in-vehicle signage could guide you along the tactical diversion route back onto the strategic road network. We can filter messages and alerts depending on vehicles type. At the moment, sign clutter is out there. You see everything. Actually, in the example below, there's a 7.5 ton weight limit. If I'm driving in my car, I don't need to see that. I don't need to see if I'm going in a clean air zone. It's not applicable to me. So let's only display the information that's relevant to the vehicle that you're driving. Final thoughts. We're not developing the solution. I wouldn't be arrogant enough to stand up here and think that we are. But what we are doing is demonstrating the art of the possible. It works. We're achieving things. What drivers may miss seeing through their windscreen, we can now inject directly into their vehicle. And I'm probably going to blow some of your minds now. I know yesterday we talked about digital twins. I'm going to talk about a digital cousin. So this is not a one-for-one digital representation of the physical environment. Because you know what? I think we can do better. We don't need to replicate the signs on poles. What we need to do is look at the hazards they represent and properly represent them in the digital world. You know, one of the things is ice warning. How many people have seen an ice warning sign? It's sitting on a pole 365 days of the year. Now, the day it's icy, do I take any notice of it? No, because it's all there all the time. If it only displayed in my dashboard that that was a hazard point on the day it was required, I'd probably take a lot more notice of it. The journey continues. You know, maybe we start to look at, we've got enough things in the cookbook to, and things done, use cases to do a trial rollout to a tame fleet, get some feedback from them. I think in conclusion, if drivers are no longer seeing all of the important information through their windscreens, then I think we've started to prove that we can put much of it into their dashboards and even improve upon it. Thank you.
But before we let Paul go, and before we all reflect on the fact that you seem to have created a sort of Singapore of the South Coast in technology, which is how I've always thought of Portsmouth. You're doing a lot, but what I'd like you to share with people is how on earth have you been able to make that happen? Because some of us, I'm mentioning no names here, but I'm just thinking here, what if your elected member said, Paul, this is great, but all I want to do is fix the goddamn potholes. Why do you keep talking to me about this stuff? What has to be true to create that sort of experimental approach that you've got in Portsmouth?
So I think firstly, because we're in a 25-year PFI, the potholes are fixed. So I don't have that conversation, which makes that agenda's off topic because, you know, we're well into the PFI. I think some of the original smart cities money that I managed to bid for and get was done on the fact that things aren't going to stay the same. We need to do things differently. And I can't predict what all of those things are going to be, but we need to go on a journey. And certainly a previous leader of the council, I had that conversation with her and said, we could just sit here and do nothing and stuff be done to us or told we've got to do things, or you know what, we could go on a journey and experiment, find the things that work, find the things that don't work, and we could sit at the table having conversations with our peers, the DFT, about, you know, how this journey happens. You know what, and they get it. They understand. We're not talking millions of pounds of money we're investing. We're doing small little pieces of money. Sort of liken it maybe to the analogy of walking down a corridor, pushing doors. Some of them are firmly bolted. You could spend £1 million trying to break the door down. There's no point, from our point of view. Let's walk down and try the small things. Go, oh, that door opened. Look, let's go on a little journey down that and see what's in there. Can we, and explore on that way. So we're not doing a multi-million pound wild rollout that then goes horribly wrong and is in the press. We're just proving small things creeping along.